Book 5, To Distraction. Deverell Viscount Paignton is in desperate need of a wife. Unmoved by the matchmaking herd, he seeks help from his aunt, who directs him to a lady who vows is perfect for him. Dispatched to a country house party to look the lady over, he discovers her not waning about among the guests, but her nose buried in a book in the library. Oh, we'll come back to that. Dear Deverell, of course I know exactly the right lady for you. April 1816. Head high, Audrey Deverell swayed back on the stool on which she was perched, narrowed her eyes at the canvas she was dabbling, then delicately touched the tip of the brush to one spot. Apparently satisfied, she regained her equilibrium and looked down at the palette balanced on her arm. I'm only surprised it's taken you this long. Seated in a well-cushioned wicker armchair beside the wide windows through which the afternoon sun washed across his aunt's studio, Jocelyn Hubert Deverell, 7th Viscount Paignton, known to all as simply Deverell, watched Audrey select another hue to add to her creation, a landscaping. His only paternal aunt, much younger than her 3 brothers, of whom his father had been the eldest, Audrey was in her late 40s, a determined, confirmed spinster. She frequently pursued the outrageous, nevertheless, being a Deverell and comfortably well-to-do, she remained an accepted member of the haute ton, even though her more conventional friends, all married, often displayed a certain jealousy over Audrey's flamboyant freedom. She was much sought after, if nothing else, to add color and serve to said matron's entertainments. Audrey's audacious unconventionality had from his earliest years drawn Deverell to her. He felt initially closer to her than any of his other aunts, 3 maternal and 2 by marriage. Consequently, now that he was quite clearly needed the sort of assistance aunts provided gentlemen such as he, it was Audrey to whom he turned. This lady is quite perfect in every way. She's of excellent family, attractive and lively, suffers from no affliction, physical or mental, is well dowered, correctly and appropriately educated, and I can personally vouch for her understanding. The last had him arching a brow. A connection? She's one of my goddaughters. I have a platoon of them. She focused on her painting. Goodness knows why, but a multitude of my friends named me godparent to their offspring. I often wondered if they thought, childless as I am, that I shouldn't be allowed to escape the nurturing role entirely. This lady, he starts again, will make you an outstanding wife. Trust me, I've seen your predicament coming for months, so of course I've given the matter due thought. You're 32, and what with the title as well as the estates, you really must marry. Admittedly, there are your uncles who could inherit after you, but as neither George nor Gisborne have sons of their own, that really isn't an acceptable alternative. And the last thing any of us wished was to see the estate revert to Penny. Indeed not. The idea of the estates, the courtesy of the unexpected death of a cousin twice removed, had fallen into his lap, reverting on his death to the crown, and its liacious bearer was one Deverell viewed with intense disfavor. He might not have expected to have to care for entail estates, but now that they were his, he'd be damned if he'd let Prinny or whoever succeeded him get their greedy hands on them. There's the social obligations, of course, Audrey nodded. Your wife must be able to manage your house and even more importantly, manage the dinner parties, balls, and so on. As Paignton, you will have to attend. If she could minimize the latter, don't even think about it. Not until you've been married for years. Then perhaps you might be allowed to slink off and hide in your library. Until that time, you'll have to grit your teeth and stand by her side at all necessary functions. Audrey threw him a look. Along with managing your appearances, your wife duties will include keeping you up to mark, ensuring you appear at all functions you ought. Well, of course, dear, I've known you from birth, and despite what you think, you are very like your father, and you have little time for artifice and none at all for fools. After spending the last 10 or more years being a spy in France, I can imagine your prejudices have only become more fixed. Consequently, the notion of you finding any degree of marital satisfaction with the general run of young ladies is utterly unattainable. I understand you've been casting your eye over the herd. The herd appeared to be hens-witted fibbergibbets with less sense than my horse. Quite well, she says. Well, there you are. It's clearly necessary to look elsewhere for a bride. Are you saying there's some other place, some other field in which I should have been searching, that the marriage mart isn't the place to look? Really, dear, I can't believe you could be so obtuse. The ladies who would suit you are no more enamored of the marriage mart than you are. You won't find them eating stale cakes at Almack's. He blinked, hope swelled. After a moment he asked, This paragon you believe would be the perfect wife for me. Who is she? PHoebe Malleson. Have I met her? If you can't remember her, the answer is no. I doubt you would have crossed Phoebe's path, not if you've been doing the pretty by the matchmaking mammas and considered their latest offerings. Phoebe turned 25 just last week, but she's been avoiding the matrimonial incline gathering for years. 25 and yet unwed? He caught Audrey's eye. Why is it you think this lady is perfect bride for me? Really, Deverell, dear, do use your head. The very reasons Phoebe is unmarried are precisely the reasons that make her perfect for you. He knew better than to quiz Audrey on the meaning of that conundrum. Her answers would make his head ache. She had at least said the lady was attractive. Besides, there was clearly a more direct route to learning all he needed to know about PHoebe Malleson. I take Miss Malleson is not in town. Where then may I find her? Oh, she's often in town, just not where you think to look. She's an only child, and her mother died years ago. Phoebe has a small army of aunts and is usually to be found with one of them, either at their houses or visiting others in their train. As it happens, I know Phoebe is presently with her aunt, Miss Edith Bowman, and they'll be entertaining a house party at Cranbrook Manor. It starts the day after tomorrow. Lady Cranbrook's a friend of yours, isn't she? Indeed, I'll be traveling down tomorrow. She let her gaze slide appreciatively over him, taking in his broad shoulders in case, Bath superfine, his neatly tied cravat, pristine linen, fashionable waistcoat, and his long legs stretched out before him. The fine muscular parent beneath tight-fitting buckskin breeches tucked into glossy black hessians. Her grin widened, and if I tell Maria I've persuaded you to attend, she'll kiss my feet. And when will Miss Malleson be arriving? Oh, Edith won't want to miss a day, and you'll be well advised to take advantage of every moment available. If you arrive in the afternoon the day after tomorrow, then I'm sure Phoebe will be there. The party is only for 4 days, so you'll want to make use of every minute. I will? Well, of course, you surely can't imagine your campaign will be easy. Campaign? How long will it take to look Miss Malleson over and decide to offer her a hand? You've already assured me she's suitable on all counts, bar the personal. Dear boy, you have the matter entirely by the tail. It's not a case of Phoebe meeting your approval. It's a case of you meeting her approval. Ha! And that won't be readily forthcoming. It's not a question of whether she's the perfect bride for you. You may rest assured she is, but of convincing her that you are the perfect husband for her. He couldn't think of 10 activities he'd rather be engaged in than setting out to persuade some difficult-to-please lady she should entrust her hand to him. Nevertheless, riven by mixed feelings, 2 days later he duly tooled his curricle out of town and down the newly macadamized roads into Surrey. At least the day was fine, the breeze light, scented with grass and earthy growing things. His pair of match greys leaned into their harness, glad to be stretching their legs beyond the confines of London streets. Until Audrey had mentioned it, he hadn't considered the more than 10 years he'd spent as a secret operative in Paris throughout the later years, when he kept a close eye on the commercial links crucial to the operation of the French state, the contracts, the connections, and when wise or necessary, disrupting those links to have had any material bearing on his requirements in a bribe. No matter how deeply he delved in his own character, he couldn't see that those years, all that he done, had been forced to do, had changed him. Not true. The real him behind his polished exterior. He was the same man he'd always been destined to be, but on reflection he could see that Audrey might be correct in one sense. The years had entrenched his traits. The experience had made him harder, more definite and more defined, more ruthless and impatient. He'd been forced to face questions many men went most of, if not all their lives without facing, the sort of questions that when once answered disallowed self-illusion. A comfortable gentleman he was not, nor would he ever be, and that was the root cause behind his rejection of all the bright young things he had paraded before him in recent months. If a magic wand had been waved, and they'd been allowed to see the real man behind his glamour, the majority would have fainted, the rest would have fled. Which was why from the first, the opening of the season a month or so ago, he'd been careful. Until recently he'd been unencumbered by large estates. London had always been his favorite haunt, although previously he'd known it only as a well-heeled gentleman of 21. He learned the ton's ropes well, enough to exercise all due caution, enough to reconnoiter from the sidelines, appearing at balls at least the moment's decency allowed, and escaping a half-hour later as soon as he had assessed the young ladies present. Such guerrilla tactics, often executed in the company of Christian Allardyce, Marquis of Dearne, had caused consternation among the matchmaking ranks, but had kept everyone safe. Christian was a close comrade, one of the other 6 gentlemen of his ilk, ex-secret operative now retired from His Majesty's service, all wealthy titled, returning to the world of the Tarn, thus all requiring a wife who had previously year banded together from the Bastion Club their bolt-hold and a strong hold against the marauding mammas who paroled the ton. And just for the record, we'll show the members of the Bastion Club. Those are your 7 members. He could admit, if only to himself, that seeing the others find mates had increased his own relentlessness, had escalated his need to find his bride, his salvation. The thought of returning to Newcastle, Paignton, Holland, Devon alone, to face a summer of being haunted by every local mamma with a daughter to settle, to have to attend innumerable functions and smile, chat, dance, all the while forever remaining on guard, was for him a working description of hell. During all those years he'd spent in France, every minute of every day of every month of every year, he'd been on guard. Alert, watchful, never resting. He was tired of tension, increasingly impatient over the continuing need for need. Although now home, he still needed to be on guard. He hadn't thought of it. He needed cerise. He wanted to relax, to enjoy a woman again, her company, her laughter, her body, her sighs of pleasure, without having the specter of her likely motives hanging over his head. He wanted a wife, a lady who would be happily his, who would share his life and remove him from the ranks of the eligible. The regular reverberating thuds of the gray horses upon his underscored his thoughts and determination. He swept through and set the grays briskly trotting. A light breeze rippled through the hefty canopies of the oaks bordering the drive. The manor appeared ahead, Cranbrook Manor, a low, wide house in gray stone, its facade rhythmically crenellated. But that where you're going, then? Deverell glanced at Granger, his horse, his groom come tiger. Yes, Deverell faced forward. He'd known Granger, about 19 years old, a lanky, good-hearted lad with a quick laugh, for less than a year. He discovered him on his first visit to Paignton, a natural with horses. Granger had nevertheless been something of an outcast, a lowly orphan with no known family, tolerated because of his unusual skill. Deverell had changed that. He'd made Granger his groom, taking him out of the routine of the larger stables and giving him his prized cattle to tend. When it came to horses, his complete faith in Granger, in other fears. While we're here, you'll behave as if you were at Paignton Hall, under Mallard and Miss Montan's thumbs. Mind what everyone says, and do nothing untoward." He felt Granger's gaze. "Been I to help you, then? Ain't there nothing I'm supposed to do, beyond the Greys, I mean? There may be something I need you for later, but the first thing you must do is be quiet, friendly, helpful, and undisruptive with all the other staff. Keep your eyes and ears open so that when I need information, you'll know who to ask, or more rightly, who to encourage to talk to you. Do you understand?" The light in Granger's eyes assured him that the horses weren't the only groom's interest. I can do that." A groom came running. Granger greeted him jovially, halting the horses and handing over the reins. Deverell stepped down from the steps. Oh, I got an itch. Before he reached the porch, the door swung wide. A large and stately butler waited to bow him in. As Audrey had prophesied, Maria Lady Cranbrook was delighted no Ings to welcome him to her home, informing him without a blink that his presence would assuredly cause a considerable stir among her female guests. Good God. He cast a sharp glance at Audrey seated behind her ladyship. His aunt merely smiled back, fondly smug, and nodded her encouragement. Then Lady Cranbrook directed him to the lawn on which the bulk of her guests were strolling. Besides, he muttered to himself, as a nonchalant smile in place, he stepped down to the lawn. How hard can it be to identify one female and run her to earth? Fatal words. By the time he'd done the sounds, been introduced and spoken politely with every female, both young and old, gracing the wide lawn and drifting beneath the trees, and discovered that Mrs. PHoebe Malleson was simply not there. His patience, always limited, had worn distinctly thin. Spying Audrey descending from the terrace, he excused himself from the matron, who, along with her two daughters, had corralled him, and strolled to intercept his aunt. "Your paragon is playing least in sight." "Well, of course she is, dear. I did warn you. Now she's 25. She's determined to go her own way and waste no more time even pretending an interest in gentlemen and marriage. So she's here at the house, but elsewhere. If she has no interest in gentlemen and marriage, why am I here? To teach her the error of her ways, of course." Taking his arm, Audrey drew him around. "Have you met Edith Bowman, Phoebe's aunt?" "Yes." Even though the connection to his paragon, he would have been drawn to and interested in learning more. Edith Bowman, however, she didn't know where her niece might be skulking either. "Well, Deverell, dear, if there's one gentleman in all this gathering with the right skills to hunt Phoebe down, it's you." Audrey caught his eye, "and when you do, I'm sure your persuasive talents will be up to the challenge of making her rethink her rejection to matrimony. One point continues to elude me. Why do you think she's so unquestionably the right lady for me?" "You'll have your answer when you find her." He wasn't going to get any more from her. With a sigh, he let her hear. He bowed over her hand and headed for the house. In one respect, Audrey was right. Tracking down people was one of his fortes. By dint of asking the butler Stripes, he learned that Miss Malleson was not called for a carriage or a horse, and consequently somewhere in the house or within walking distance of it, but was not in her chamber, and secondly, where all the places a lady might seek solitude were located. When he opened the panel door of the library, stepped silently inside, and instantly knew she was in the library. He realized that dealing with Phoebe Malleson, he was going to have to adjust his thinking. She wasn't the average young lady. He couldn't see her from where he stood, but instincts honed through years of constant danger informed him he wasn't the sole human in the room, that indeed there was a female in the room. He halted, head and shoulders comfortably supported by a large fringed cushion. Phoebe Malleson, he had no doubt it was she, lay reclining on a chaise angled away from the window. The light streamed in, striking garnet glints from her neatly coiled coronet of dark red hair before falling on the pages of the book she was engrossed in. So engrossed she hadn't noticed he walked into the room. She was, he estimated, as he eyed the length of her leg, demurely concealed beneath filmy, pale blue skirts, a trifle taller than the average. Her figure was slender, yet, as far as he could tell, given her pose, her hips were nicely rounded. Indeed, all her features, broad brow, straight nose, wide eyes, he couldn't tell the color, sat beneath finely arched brows and framed by lush lashes, and her fractally too large mouth with its full red lips all neatly sat in the pale oval of her face. Audrey had been right. Just setting eyes on Phoebe Malleson awoke a compelling curiosity, a wish to know more, to learn what such an unusual lady tick. As he watched her eyes never leaving the page, Phoebe Malleson extended one slender arm, searched, located a pair of grapes, deftly plucked them, then carried it to her mouth, hesitated when she fingered a section, then slowly eased the plump grape into her luscious lips. Deverell watched it slide into her mouth. Inwardly grimacing, he shifted his weight. She looked up and she sees him. The man was tall and large. How had he gotten so close? Who the devil was he? More to the point, her inner self whispered, what was he? A peculiar shiver slithered down her spine. She continued to stare, mesmerized, hypnotized, caught, trapped within his gaze, alarmed and not a little disgusted at such ridiculous and newfound susceptibility. She forced herself to blink and succeed in wrenching her eyes from him. Good afternoon. Her voice at least was her own, firm and even, rather surely. I don't believe we've met. I fear I have the advantage of you, Miss Malleson. Lids rose, startled. She met his gaze. I'm Deverell. Deverell. She tapped one finger on her book, then quickly looked back at him. He came forward. You must be Audrey's nephew. Indeed, I am Paignton. Ah, yes, I've heard that you have come into the title. Why was he here disturbing her peace? Intending to dismiss him, she glanced back at the shelves. Were you after a book? No. I came for you. What? Excuse me. I gotta be on guard. He's come for me. Oh, good God. It took a moment or three for his words to reach her brain. Even when they did, they made no sense, not when matched with the tenor of his voice. Is my aunt asking after me? No, not that I know of. I take it it's time for tea? Soon, I dare say. Why, then, did you come looking for me? Audrey suggested I do so. Audrey? Indeed. Why? I gather she believed I would benefit from making your acquaintance. And have you? Only time will tell. Her instincts flickered. She held his gaze while thoughts milled in her head. Recollections of what she'd heard of him, little by the way of specifics. Nothing had prepared for her the impact of his physical presence. Yet of his station speculation had been rife. He was wealthy, titled, and undeniably required a wife. His Aunt Audrey was her godmother, a close friend of her aunt. It didn't require much mental effort to discern why he'd been appointed in her direction. Yet despite her aunt's and her godmother's fond hopes, she wasn't interested in filling the position he had vacant. She refocused on his gaze and noted the intensity, the acuity behind his green eyes. How best to get rid of him? Tell him plainly to go away? In her experience, such tactics rarely worked, especially not with men like him. He would either not believe she was serious or worse, decide to interpret her refusal as a challenge. No, in their current location, there was much more effective way of dealing with him. Perhaps very conscious of the nearness and more of the attention being completely focused on her. We should join the others for tea. A moment passed, if you wish, but before he could offer his arm and leave her compelled to take it, and thus be far closer to him than she needed to be, she flashed a smile and turned to the French doors. We can go this way, the shortcut out the doors. And she has a secret. She has a secret cause of something secret she's doing. Oh, I remember what she's doing. Will Deverell find out what she's hiding? Will he help her with her cause? which she's doing. She's helping those nursemaids out, or the maids, regular maids, housemaids. She's got a little secret mission going there. So, for those of you who've just started with us, please go check. We did all the Sinsters. We did all 9 Sinsters. Bastion Club Book 1. A Gentleman's Honor Book 2. A Lady of His Own Book 3. And what did I just had it? A Fine Passion Book 4. To Distraction Book 5. Next week, we shall do Beyond Seduction. The week after, The Edge of Desire. And Dizeel's identity is revealed to all. And they're getting married, the Bastion Club. And then when we finish the Bastion Club, we're going to pick up a few Sinsters before we move on to the Black Cobra and the Buccaneers. So please hit the like and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Have a good one.